Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the city budget office hour session. We'll just do a quick introduction of the panelists today, a couple of quick admin things, and then we'll be ready to roll. So I'm Erin Molinix. I'm the research director with the Iowa League of Cities. I'm joined by League staff, Heather Roberts, who's helping us with the tech, Nikki Shields, membership services director, and we have Teresa Roth-Schaefer, and she is the League's finance consultant. She just got started kind of doing that role with us over the last few months. And then we have Dr. Bishwa Das from Iowa State Extension Community and Economic Development Program. So we're going to be your panelists, and in a moment I'm going to hand things over to Teresa. She's going to do a short presentation, and then we'll open it up, and that'll be your chance to ask whatever budget questions are on your minds in this pretty challenging budget season, I think, with a lot of changes in the last year or two or three. So a couple admin things before we get started. We are going to try to record this. I promised IT I wasn't going to say that it's going to be tomorrow or the next day. So give us a week or so and we'll send everyone registered a link to the recording. I want to thank the National Science Foundation and the Rural Smart Shrink Grant led out of Iowa State. Dr. Das and I are on part of that grant team. And I'm going to drop the link into the recording, but they've generously sponsored today's office hours. And we're going to kick off a new office hours series. So this will be the first in that series. Really appreciate their generous sponsorship. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa. And I'll first mention we have some cybersecurity features enabled within Zoom. So your ways of reaching out to us with questions will be either through the Q&A feature, questions and answer, or by raising your hand, and then we will set it so that you're allowed to speak. We don't have the chat enabled so that everyone can see it. Although if you do submit a question in the chat, it will come into us as panelists. So we'll be able to see it, but everybody else will not. So we'll typically default then to the Q&A or by raising your hand with the little emoji. So with that, Teresa, I'm handing it over to you.
Okay, great. If you want to go ahead and push the next slide. I was having, go ahead. And I was having some technical difficulties getting onto the system, so I didn't get a chance to really review much with Erin, but we're going to get started here. I put together just what I thought would be a quick presentation, but most of you out there may know me and know that I'm kind of a geek about all this city finance stuff, and I talk forever. So I'm going to try to breeze through some of these. All of you can read the slides. I assume they would get them or have access to them, Erin, and yes. Have them. But we're going to talk about just a few of the things that are affecting budgets as we work on them for this year. And one of the first things I tell cities that I've been working with is that they need to complete that long-term debt sheet in your budget. You really need to know what kind of debt you have out there, whether it's general obligation, revenue debt, capital lease debt, TIP debt. Know the fees you're going to have to pay your registrars and who those are. And then, of course, you need to remember and make sure that a city's debt limit is 5% of your 100% assessed value. And if you're a new city clerk or you haven't been around, and you would look at like the last FY23 annual financial report, which if you don't know where that's at, you can always find your annual financial report on the same state website that we use to enter our budgets. You can search for your annual financial report to find last year's from your city. And on the very front page, it tells you, on the very last page, excuse me, of your AFR, annual financial report, it would tell you that limit. Next slide, please. We're talk quickly just about how the budget is your plan. We use it to control what we spend. We also should be using it to monitor and report to our councils, mayors and councils, what's happening with your finances. You have the ability to amend that budget, even so, you know, that's what you would do if you had to. And then we're going to talk about well, a little bit. Last year they recalculated the residential rollback, but then this year they of course handed us this idea of ratcheting our growth. There's a link there to the Department Management website, which is where we all go to get tools, and I'll try to hit on those in a few minutes. Next, we're gonna go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry, if I had the clicker, I would do it if I knew how to do that. But remember, as you talk about that there's a difference in your valuations between assessed, taxable, and market. And although this isn't on a slide, I just want to remind everyone now. I saw the list of attendees, and I knew some of the names, but not all of the names. And so if you're a newbie, a new person, please know that the city's budgets and the things you work on are operated on what's called a fiscal year. So we're going from July to June. And when we talk about annual financial report, and you look at there and it says annual financial report 2023, that's not for the calendar year 2023. That was for your fiscal year 23. And when we say fiscal year 23, please always remember the number we're saying usually 95% of the time is the last year of your budget. So FY 23 would mean June 30, 23. Right now, you guys are working on the FY 25 budget. So we're working on the budget that's going to end on June 30, 2025. So, and when we get assessed values from the county, they're assessing the valuation we're using right now for our FY 25 budget is the assessment that was done on January 1st, 2023. And so people really get confused with all the numbers that we have, but the assessed value is the value that was given to the properties by the county assessor, okay? And then there's what's called the taxable value. And so the taxable value comes into play when the county or the state has passed this rollback feature, and it's taking the value of a property and they roll it back so that you're only getting taxed on a certain amount. And so that rollback has been around forever. Mickey, I can't remember what you told me, 75, 82, something like that, long time. Anyway, what happened this year rolled back the values as far as they've ever been rolled back, like 2008, maybe we thought, or 9. They were rolled back about that far. It's had a huge effect on valuations for cities. And then on top of that, we had this new ratchet back effect, this House File 718. So the good part about all of that, and the less confusing part about it, is when you opened up your tax form from the state, Ted had it already configured and all of your information was there. So thank goodness he did that for us, because we'd all be really, really struggling. But quickly, there's more than just you have residential properties, commercial, industrial, ag, and each one of those have different rollbacks. And then, of course, every community seems to have a little bit of tax exempt property or a lot of tax exempt property. And of course, that plays a role in the fact that you have to give services, fire, police, and streets that you have to clean around properties that aren't paying property tax as well. Sometimes it's helpful to know how much you have, just so you can remind your council that you're working on those. Then there's 2 other things that are still available to cities. The business property tax credit is something that the state legislature offered about 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And the first couple of years you just had to apply for it. Last year they decided that everyone should just get it. So now all businesses get this business property tax credit. And so for a city to realize, and then the city is to be reimbursed for that credit. So for you to figure out how much business property tax credit is happening in your community and how much money you're going to get back, on the Department of Management website, or there is an actual tool. If you look down there under all of the city tools that are available, or city resources, there's a tool that you download there's a drop down, you put in your city, you have to put in your tax rates on another tab, and then it will calculate for you what your BPTC credit will be, how much goes to the general fund, the special revenue fund, your debt fund, and those types of things. You need to calculate that also if you're going to budget that revenue for your city. There's a webinar on the league's website about that credit if you'd like to look that up. Then there's also the remaining few years of the commercial and industrial backfill. There's a tool there for you to calculate also how much money you're going to get in backfill. It's different for different cities. Some cities were getting backfill for 5 years. Some were going to get it for 8 years. There's the link for the tool for that on the Department of Management website as well. You'll want to calculate that if you want to count that revenue. Some cities, frankly, some cities don't report that revenue in their budget, and then when they get it, it's just extra revenue. This is just another slide about why backfill happens. So we can move on, but you can read that later about when that happened and the history for that. So the state for years has had 810 levy limit, and that we were never supposed to go over the 810 levy for our general fund budget. And that's still true, only now, besides that, they have added and combined and removed a bunch of levies that cities had available to us, and they have they have added in this ratchet back mechanism, which honestly can't remember if I have it on the slide, but I think I do, about the percentage and stuff. And then of course, remember this term. So 810 levy limit's a term you need to remember because it's our impression or our understanding that the House File 718, the purpose was to try to get everybody back to at least 810 all over the state. And that's what they were trying to do. Per capita means is by population. And so the most important one that we always think of is how much road use tax are we going to get for our per capita. It also affects local option sales tax too. So next slide. This is important, the timing, and that's what has been a question for numerous people. And I think some of the questions we got in earlier than the webinar was about the timing, but basically everything has to be done this year before April 30th. And so to do your timing, you start with April 30th and you count backwards. The council is going to have to set 2 public hearings. And with those 2 public hearings, you still have the publication or posting requirements. And for budgets, there are 20 days, no more than 20 days, nor less than 20 days before a hearing. So you have to calculate all that out. And on top of that, I've been talking to cities and reminding them, a lot of cities only have a paper that publishes once a week. And they publish on a Thursday or Friday. And they have to get their notice to the paper by the Monday or Tuesday ahead of that week. So they have to try to remember what that how that affects it so that they can have their information from the council before they have to have their information ready to get to the paper so it gets publicized on the date it needs to be in the paper. And in your state budget form, there's a tab up there that Ted put up there, publication calculation. So you put in the date that you're having a hearing. It gives you the not before and not after date. So you know you can't mess that part up, and then you can figure out in between what that will be. You cannot have the first public hearing on the proposed tax notice, which is the new notice. So instead of what we used to, or the last several years, we had the max property tax notice. Now you have the proposed tax notice that's going to go to everybody. You cannot have that hearing before March 25th. All right, that's just information that's come down from the Department of Management. So just remember, basically, you can't start having hearings until March 25th and after. You cannot set your hearing for your budget adoption until after you have that, say you have it on March 25th. You can't set your budget adoption hearing until after you've held that other hearing. So on top of all of that, then you have to make sure that you have all your budget information ready and put together at least 20 days before that second hearing or the final hearing of the budget adoption. And you need to have it in 3 places. So usually a mayor's office, the clerk's office, and the library. One city I'm in, they're gonna have it at the library. I think the library, the fire station, and the co-op. So that's how that's their 3 places. So next slide. Here's a timing calendar, budget timeline on when that may have worked for cities. There's other budget examples out there. Ted put one out there. If you have 1 meeting a month versus 2 meetings a month, several cities are having to have special meetings to get all of their requirements done to meet those dates. So next slide. Budget minutes, quickly, just a reminder, you need to have those done, I would say before May 31st, so that you have some time in case the public wants to appeal that budget. Same budget or publication or posting requirements, 10 and 20 days. And remember, this should be done before any expenditure program functionary exceeds a budget. If you need more explanation on that, call me. I think our information is included at the end. We'll go on with the next one. This is what an amendment notice would look like. You go into that state website, you pull up budget amendment, you select amendment notice, everything pops in for your last certified. You just have to add what you're changing the budget to, and then it will calculate. The green numbers are going to be in there, the blue numbers will calculate themselves, and then you have to have the description. So it's not hard to do. Next slide. So this is just a notice of budget amendment. So that's all right, go on. Timing, how long did it take to get your information? I had one city, I think it's a question we got, how long do they wait for people to get their information in? They should have it, absolutely. Whatever city asked me that, they should be getting it to you now. You need it now, you need the numbers now. We're towards the end of February, and you need to have that information. If we're supposed to have our tax notices to the county by March 5th, you need your numbers now. So what information do you need to collect? You need to collect your debt amortization schedules. You need to collect information from the departments about what they're doing. You need to know if there's any capital projects that are planned for the year. And then you need to know if your city plans to give you any increase in wages so that you can calculate what those are. This is what a budget worksheet looks like. And you would just pass these out to the department directors. And so in this particular case, this is a Parks page. So I would give this to a Parks director, and then they would fill in the proposed budget line. So I would know what that is. So most systems give you like 3 years of actual history and the current year, and then the proposed year with a blank line, and you fill that in. Next slide. That's what you give your department directors. Here's what the hearing notice is going to look like. The newest hearing notice, that this is the one that you have to have for your first hearing that you're going to have. I'm afraid, quite frankly, you guys will have to work on this yourself, but we're afraid that it's going to send still the wrong message to our property owners. This is quite frankly what ours looks like right now, and you'll see that it says negative 10.4%. Their taxes will go around 10.46. That's not true. I mean, we're raising the rate 68 cents, and more than likely their house didn't stay assessed at 100,000 for the year, and we're trying to get together some sort of infographic or something so that we can show what this really means, because when they get their real tax bill, it isn't going to look like the notice we had to put in our paper. But the first year is our current budget. The second column, you guys, is what the budget would look like, what the budget you're planning would look like if you use the same tax rate as last year. And so it would be just telling them that we would have gone a tax rate from 1085 to 1028 if we wanted to get the same dollars, which anyway, we're going to be going to we want $19.9 million versus $17.8 million, and we're going to ask for an increase. So the reason we have to ask for an increase, quite frankly, is that we've been using reserves for years, and that we're desperately trying to have only a 25% reserve in our general fund. versus a rate, very big high reserve. So we'll see how that goes. So next slide. I gotta watch the time. What time is it? I should be wrapping up. This is just one of the re-estimated pages. You have to do those when you work on your budget. If you need help with those, I can. Next page, Erin. I think again, just more examples for you. Next page. Next page. So when you get all done, of course, then you have to fill in the pages for the next year's budget. So just keep going, Erin. This is the important page, your long-term debt page. I always do that first at the beginning. You're going to fill out your long-term debt page, and the amount that is at the bottom that says the amount paid current year debt service levy, that $47,100 number, that jumps over to your front property tax tab page, and it calculates what your debt service rate is going to be. So you can't figure out what levy, you can't put in a dollar amount on your property tax sheet for your debt service levy like you will for your other levies. It's coming from this page. So I just want to make sure you understand why that page is so important. Next page. And then there's always a summary about what your for your new budget. So this would be something important for the council to see. This would be the revenues and the expenditures. And at the very bottom of the page, they would see, as an example, what their beginning balance is for 22-23 and what their ending balance is in a fund. And they would look across and see that our beginning balance was $1.8 million and we're getting to 2.1 million. Next page. So then this is now the official adoption page of your budget. And this stuff at the top is what I was telling you about that Ted calculated for you. So now all your valuations appear for you. And depending on your taxable growth, which is over here on the far right side of the paper, where it says 4.95, you would have fallen in tier 2. So if you grew from 0 to 3, there was no limitation percentage. It would have said 0. If you're between 3 and 6, that limitation percentage would have said 2, which is what this one says. And then if you were 6 or over, the limitation percentage would have said 3. Can you point to that? Thanks, Erin. So because it was 2, what it has done is it has calculated that instead of our rate being 837 for our CGFL rate, like we had in FY24, our maximum rate is going to be 820,588. So that rate and that dollar amount is the maximum we can get for our combined general fund. So that 13,871,000 is what I put down here on line 5 in your budget. I put in the 13,871,824. And then the rest of the levies that you could use anymore that are left is if you had transit, airport, liability and property, and self-insurance, so tort costs, support of a local emergency management commission, which is harder to explain than easy. Not very many out there, but or unified law enforcement. And then, of course, we have the ag land levy. And then the special revenue levies, you still have those available to you. And I double checked this morning with Ted. If you were a community that was at 810 last year under the CGFL, you were at 810. And because of the ratchet mechanism, you've been now lowered to 7.8 something. I asked if that, what it said, FICA and IPERS, the general fund at levy limit. I asked if that still meant they could use that levy because they aren't at 810 anymore because of the ratchet back. And he said, as long as they use the maximum dollars in the CGFL, they're still at the maximum they could be at. They can use that levy. So I wanted that clarification before we met today. And then, of course, the debt service levy or a capital project levy, which some communities have and some don't. It's a voted levy. So I think, Erin, I don't know how many slides are left, but I think those were the important highlights. That's the notice. Here's the timing. Again, we talk about the mailing of the notice. shouldn't take any action. You know you have to have a separate standalone meeting. Keep going. We talk about the notice that's going to go out. They asked we have it by March 5th. One of the questions we had earlier was, how do I get it to my county auditor? You're really going to get it to the Department of Management, and they're going to get it to all the county auditors. So in the process on the state website where you're putting in your budget, and you have to put in the published notice, and then you have the dates, and then when you adopt that after that meeting, it's going to automatically go to the Department of Management. I think that's how you would normally do it. That's how you've done it for your certified budget. That's how you will do it for this as well. So I don't think you have to run a paper anywhere or go see your auditor or any of that stuff. It's going to happen electronically for you. So keep going, Aaron. Same thing, keep going. This is the one we talked about, the max levy and what they were doing, what they consolidated. Yeah, you can keep going. I think these are the levies that were consolidated into that combined general fund levy, or whatever it was called. I call it combined. And then these were the ones that were left alone. So you keep going. And then here again is the maximum and the ratchet thing. So you'll have that information if you don't have that somewhere else. Keep going. And then here's the notice that's going to come out from the county. It's going to have city, school, and county information. I think I might, if you want to keep going, I think I might have a copy of that. Here's what it's going to look like. It's going to have your current property dollars, your current tax rate. Then it has the effective tax rate, meaning, again, what the tax rate could be if you just lowered it to take them out the same amount of money, and you weren't raising it to take any more property tax dollars. But if you're still raising it to take more property tax dollars, what's the new rate? Well, in this case, the rate's staying at $9.90, but because their valuation grew, they're going to get more dollars. They're going to get from 45 to 47. Next one. Also on that notice, then there'll be a part where it gives the county, city, school. You'll notice there's another column now called TIF tax, and they're going to add in that space. They're going to add in mostly to cities, I believe. I think there are some counties that have some TIF. They're going to add in the amount that we've asked for TIF revenue, so that our total property tax number is going to be much higher than what we normally get from the Department of Management for our certified tax notice about our levies. So I think that's really going to affect our percentage authority percentage of tax. So we'll see how that all plays out. Next one. And then they have to give this notice, and they said in the law that they have to give a notice for $100,000 home, $150,000 business. Big mistake, because on a $150,000 business, they have to roll it back to the same residential rollback. So they're going to think that the business and the resident pays the same, because they should have done a larger residence or larger business, so that they knew if it was a $400,000 business, the first 150 would be residential rollback. The rest of the property would be 90% rollback. So again, very confusing to the general public, but this is what the law says we'll do. And so these are the restrictions. We have revenue types that we're limited on. We're limited by levy limits now. We're limited by statute on so all of the revenues that we collect seem to be limited for us. And then, of course, we have certain expenditures or mandates, what we have to pay, 411, IPERS, things like that. I won't go over this. You guys can look at this, but this is kind of a calculation of what that top part of our budget certification does for you. So I'll let you look at this later. And then, of course, July 1st, Happy New Year. We get to do it all over again. So I'll end, because I took more time than I was supposed to take. So any more questions we didn't miss? We're ready now. And
yeah, no worries about going over. This is very important and complex information. We've had a lot of changes, so I figured we might need a little bit more time on that, but we should have plenty of time. I think we've got another hour or so for questions.
Okay, good.
So one question that came in, and I think, actually, we've heard from several cities, is do we have to send the notice to the county for the max property tax hearing? Or do they just get it from the state? And that's my understanding, is that you're inputting it, and then DOM will be giving, Department of Management will be giving that through their channels to the county. Is that
That's
sound right, Teresa?
That's correct.
Okay. Other questions? And I need to make sure that I've got my Q&A box open. It looks like there
We
might be
do have one.
something.
Teresa, back, you were one of the slides you referenced a specific column that you entered. The question is, I've always been advised to enter B, property tax levied on the budget. And I'm pretty sure Teresa said she enters A, request with utility replacement. Which column is correct? You following that question, Teresa?
Well, you enter, you only get to enter on this page, you only get to enter A5. The system calculates B5.
So
So you
is
want to
this
put in
part of it?
Yeah, you want to put in, if you want the maximum dollars, you're going to have to take that maximum dollar number and put it on A5. The system calculates B5. And then if you were to go back to the revenue tab of the detail, you're going to see that the property tax number is down to this 13,563. And a little ways down further on the revenue page, it will say utility excise tax. I have it open, utility excise tax, and it will have put in the difference so that you know, so that you're supposed to be, in the end, you're supposed to be getting the 13,871, but they're giving it to you as property taxes and utility excise tax. Does that make sense, whoever asked that question? If that's what they're asking me.
You can use the raise your hand emoji if you want to clarify or ask more about that as we go, just as a reminder. Okay. I think the next question on the property tax notice, am I correct that my assumption that this works similar to the levy, and that what we put as the proposed tax rate, it cannot be any higher, but it could be lower?
That's true.
Yes. Okay. Do we still take signed copies of the final submitted sub-budget and publication affidavit to the auditor as in the past?
I believe you will, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I will chime in. This one's come up several times. And a similar thing happened when they did the first iteration of the truth and taxation hearing and process. People tended to, not forget, but maybe overlook that the annual adoption of the budget has not changed. That process has not changed. So what causes confusion, of course, is all these different initial steps that have been added in going back 4 or 5 years now. So it's understandable, but the final part of the process has not changed. It's been in place for as long as I've been around, where you have to hold a hearing on your proposed annual budget. Once that is concluded, you adopt that by resolution. Then you do the final steps, which is basically submitting all your materials to the county and to the Department of Management.
Yeah, so I think there's been some confusion because with the taxpayer statement hearing, you're not doing that step, and then your final step you are, as you have been used to.
Teresa, we got a question that came in via chat. When do the numbers get sent to the county? Is that their decision, or is it sent all at once, or can they send it early if they want? I'm not sure how that process works, if anyone does know.
Well, the numbers don't go to the county until you've adopted the full budget. So, you know, if they're talking about that, or are they talking about the numbers
I think
to the county for the first hearing?
The new statement
The
that needs to be
notices.
submitted to the county.
Well, those by law, they need to be turned in by March 15th. The Department of Management has asked us to have those done by March 5th. And they don't have to take, like I said, they don't have to take them to the county. There's gonna be a process on the state website where when you ask to publish it, and they'll put in a date, and then I think you approved, or it's done, or the hearing's over. I'm not sure what it's gonna say because I haven't clicked on it because I'm not there yet, but then it will go automatically to the Department of Management, and you're not gonna have to go to the county.
One thing I've been telling cities, like, and several of us have, is don't be afraid to talk to your county folks, your county treasurers, about this process, because it's new for them as well. And from what we've heard, they're just as confused as we are in
Mhm.
municipal government land about what exactly is expected and how this is all going to work. I would also stress that Ted and others are concerned that the counties are not going to be given enough time under this new statutory process, and that we all need to exercise patience as to the best of our abilities. So if you are a city that's working ahead, because I have talked to a few of you that are basically ready to send in your statement, that new statement, to Department of Management, and the Department of Management is going to send those all out to each county, and the county is then to prepare the consolidated taxpayer statements. They're going to be mailed to each property owner. That's all the steps that go into this. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes with this new law. But one just sort of good neighborly thing to do, if you're at the stage now where you're basically ready with that proposed tax rate statement, is to just call up your county treasurer or email them, just say, hey, I think I'm ready. Does this look right to you? Just kind of make sure you're on the same page, given that, again, everyone's going to be pretty confused about this.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And just keeping in mind, they're asking for the March 5th. I think according to the legal piece of it, it's March 15th. But from the county side of things, they have to turn around and mail all of these statements within 5 days, March 20th, regardless of the weekend. And so that seems like a very challenging task. So that's probably why they're asking for the guideline of March 5th. If you can have those in, and then can't have that first public hearing until March 25th. And the reason for that is so that to give time for the statements to go through the mail.
So interestingly, Mickey, even what you just said, are you saying that the county treasurers have to mail out these notices, not the county auditors?
I don't know who exactly is named in the law, actually, on the county side of this. That's a good question. I don't think, I mean, I would probably do both, county auditor and the treasurer. I just feel like typically the treasurer at the county level is a person who executes all this stuff. But I don't know actually who's named in the law on,
You have to go back and check.
yeah, who's actually at the county level, who's responsible for mailing each property owner the consolidated statements.
So another question we got through the chat is, could you clarify which meeting it is in the timeline that has to be separate from a council meeting? Is it the proposed tax notice on the 25th?
Yes.
So Aaron, can we go
So
back?
as an example, as my example, we have a council meeting already scheduled for April 1st, a regular city council meeting. So we're gonna have our first meeting at 6 on this notice. And at 6 o'clock, we'll have the notice or the hearing on this thing, and it'll be only thing on the agenda. And you talk about it, you have the hearing, you close the hearing, it's done, it's over with. And then we have a reasonable amount of time between that meeting and the next meeting. We open up and have another meeting. And at the next meeting, then on the agenda will be to set the public hearing for the adoption of the budget at the next council meeting. So it's it's the meeting. That public hearing is the meeting that has to be held after March 25th or after, depending on when your city has meetings. So I've done a lot of calendars for a lot of cities and, you know, like I said, worked with their newspapers and that type of thing. So there's a lot of them having a meeting on like March 27th, which I don't know what day of the week that is, but I feel like I've done a lot of calendars that March 27th, they're having that special meeting because they're a 1 month meeting count or city. And then at their regular meeting, like the next week or the next week, they're going to set the public hearing for another special meeting towards the end of April for the final adoption. So, that's just how it's working out.
So to try to clarify a little bit, hopefully this is right. They would have their meeting to set the first property tax statement. And then they would have that, they could close that meeting, they could have their regular council meeting as a separate meeting on the same day, but they cannot have the two hearings, meaning the property tax statement and the final budget adoption on the same day, even if they're separate meetings, because
Yep.
you'd have to set that. So that had been clarified from our original understanding. So I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
those
you
can't be on the
you
same
can't
day.
you can't even set the hearing for the adoption of the budget till after you have
That's
the
close.
public hearing on the taxation notice.
Some more on that special meeting. When they say only thing on the agenda, they usually, you know, the setting of the agenda, the Pledge of Allegiance, those kinds of things. Can those still be on those meetings?
Yes.
agendas? Okay.
But no other items that take action.
And question, do we still need to post the notice of public hearing for the proposed tax levy to our Facebook page and website?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
and
and-
you must keep a history of those year to year, leave them there, don't take them down. So,
All right.
Looks like we got another question in the Q&A, a couple more here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
At the general property tax hearing, is my understanding that we do not take any action, we just hold the hearing. Is that correct?
yes.
That
Yeah,
is
this is a change from the first version of the truth and taxation hearing and process where you did have to have your council approve something. This time around, you have to hold the hearing, but no formal approval is needed from your council. We addressed this during the budget workshops a little bit, and I think Ted's guidance was if your council wants to adopt that statement on your proposed tax rate, you can. There's no harm in that. But it's not required. So it's up to you all. I imagine most cities will not, just because you don't need to, and you'll close the hearing out whenever the hearing's done and end that meeting. And I know some cities are planning to have a separate regular council meeting after that. And Ted's guidance there is to wait 15, 30 minutes, something like that. So it's clear to any members of the public that are paying attention that they are two separate meetings that the council is holding. Again, if you're intending to have your council do two meetings in one night, with one of those being the hearing for the proposed tax rate. Clear as mud.
okay,
And,
also in the Q&A, can I submit the information to Department of Management for the first public meeting prior to the council officially setting the date?
For what?
So could you submit, I'm guessing here that Daryl means that, can we submit the information that's going to go on to the property tax statement through the budget form to DOM before setting the official date for the hearing?
I wouldn't submit that information until the hearing's over with.
Would they
No.
have to submit it by March 5th?
Yeah, and you can't have your first
Then the
hearing
Oh,
hearing
that's
can't
true.
be
after the
until
notice.
later.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
So I think so, right? Or do they need?
Yeah, I guess that's true because you're gonna have to, like, at our council meeting tonight, we're gonna find out for sure that we're staying at the levy we thought, so I have it done and I'll be able to turn it in.
Okay, so do they need to have that meeting with their council to decide that before they actually submit it?
I would say when the council, because I think, where's my budget calendar? I think, um, okay, we have a city council meeting on March 4th. So on March 4th, they're gonna set the public hearing for April 1st for this thing. And when they set the public hearing, they're gonna set the public hearing for the information I give them, and that's what I'm sending in. So I would say that a city should set the public hearing date. They can set a public hearing date for a month away.
Mhm.
And that when they set the public hearing date, they're using that information that we as finance people have prepared, and that's what they're setting hearing on.
So you'll
And
submit
that's what I submit.
your information to Department of Management before or after your March 4th council?
I would submit it the very next day after the council agreed to
Okay.
set the public hearing.
And we could check with Department of Management, I guess if there's a technicality there. It seems like maybe a good idea, but
I was wondering about that too, Aaron. I feel like Ted's answer would be that your council should have formally scheduled a hearing before you submit your
before
statement
you submit it.
to him at the Department of Management. I was just checking the hearing notice form in the city budget file, and it doesn't look like there's a slot where it's required to list your scheduled hearing date.
Okay,
But just how this whole thing works, I think that formal scheduling of the hearing needs to be done before you can get into the next step, which is submitting the actual notice to the Department of Management. And then you go
Well,
on
I
to the
think
next
you-
step.
I don't interrupt to make it, but I think you have to because the notice has when the hearing is.
Right. Yeah.
the
So I
notice
think-
has
we
when the
have-
hearing is, yes.
Yeah.
So we have to know when we're gonna do it, when we,
Right.
so whatever, so you have to set the hearing with your date and time so you can put in the form to send it to the county.
Yep.
Another question's come in. We were planning to have our public hearing on proposed tax rate on April 3rd and no other business on that agenda. And then close that meeting and then have another meeting with our financial advisor to go over projects. We are not approving anything, just having a discussion. Is that okay?
I would say so.
Yes.
I mean, the main criteria or the main requirement in the state code with this new part of the process is that the meeting for that in that hearing is completely separate. So as
Yeah.
long as that is the case, you're fine. You can have other meetings that evening for regular city business or a separate thing for this, like Christy brought up with having a meeting to talk about a project or go over things with your financial advisor. As long as that meeting is separate from the first one on your proposed tax rate in that hearing, you're fine. That's the main thing that we would stress, and I know Ted would too, is the state code is very specific about having a separate meeting with no other city business on that proposed tax rate.
And then I think the question, even if they had a separate meeting on the same day for other council business, it's okay to approve things that aren't related to the property tax statement
In that separate meeting.
in the separate meeting.
Yeah. Like going back to, I know there's going to be some cities just because of the way the schedule works, and it's surprisingly tighter than I think a lot of people realized early on, because at first it was like April 30th is the new deadline. It gives you another month. And it's like, because of all these hearings and notices and whatnot, and these new statements that have to be mailed out to property owners, it actually might be a shorter time frame to get through things than previous years. So I know some cities are going to hold their property tax rate hearing before their regular council meeting on a Monday, somewhere in there in probably late March or early April, as we were just talking about. And then, so they hold their hearing on the proposed tax rate, close that, you wait 15, 30 minutes, and then it might be your regular council meeting that night. And then you just go into your normal regular council meeting whatever, normally goes on your agenda, and you just hold a normal meeting.
Okay. Let's see, Justin wrote answer, okay. Let's see, any other questions you are seeing? I think, Teresa, one that we got ahead of time was how much information the council should have available, or summary level information available. I think you answered that during the session. I talked to a couple folks about this similar question it was a few weeks ago. And at that time, I think it was a little more squishy of how much information could be available, because I think there were some counties that didn't have their valuations yet to folks in late January. But at this point, everyone should have that. I think that's kind of what you had answered, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, when we finally, it looks like they all have it. According to the BOM site where we put in our budgets, everyone finally got their valuation. I was in a couple of those counties, I would have been a little honked off, but because you're waiting to get your work done. And depending on the amount of information you give the council, it's kind of based on, unfortunately, about how much information they really want. But I'm just saying that one page in the budget, if you have a council that doesn't really want all the detail and all the charts and graphs and all that kind of stuff, that at least to go over the account summary page with them. And maybe there's another good page that I like to show them, which is just on fund balance. And it shows 3 years of history about what's been happening in each of those funds, so that they can see what kind of fiscal condition their city's been in, where they're at a little bit. I think that's very important. And yet, I always over information them. So I know I give a lot of information and I do a lot of charts, and I'll be honest with you, there's a few of them that always say, but I wanted that chart, so you sometimes can't ever give them enough stuff. So ask them what kind of information they want. Do they want line item detail? Do they want summary by department? Do they just want overall summary? What are we looking for here? And try to get a good feel for what it is that you think your council wants. I think I just saw another question pop up, but I don't know what it is.
Let's see. Yes. Looks like a couple. Let's see. If we do not change our tax rate, but our city will take in more revenue from property taxes just based on oh, now my screen jumped. Are you seeing that question?
Yeah, I can read it off if that works. If we do not change our tax rate, but our city will take in more revenue from property taxes just based on the increase in valuations, what is the explanation we should use on the max property tax summary? And it was offered up, in quote, revenue went up due to increase in valuations while the tax rate stayed the same.
That's good enough.
Yeah.
I think that's good enough. I know one city that's going to ask for more information, and they're going to put something down as simply as inflationary pressure has put them in constraints on some expenses, and they need more revenue.
And that somebody asked me to say that again. So this was a good one. This actually came from, I believe, Megan in Alta. Thank you, Megan. The quick statement: revenue went up due to increase in valuations while the tax rate stayed the same. To explain the increase in revenues. Now, the finance officers out there, that's probably what they would do. The city managers and city clerks would probably say you should add a little context, as Teresa was saying, because there is a political side to all of this with your budgets. I'm sure many of you know. What I would say is what Teresa's getting at. I would say the increase in expenditures due to normal inflation or high inflation, whatever you want to call it, is also causing us to maintain our tax rate and collect more revenue. Something to that effect. This is, I think, a strategic mistake on our parts in the past, is not explaining to the public enough about expenditures in our budgets. We always tend to allow the conversation to be squarely on revenues, which makes sense because that's the one aspect you have more control over. to a certain degree. You can't control valuations, but you can control your tax rate. So you have a little bit more control on revenue side, while expenditures are a little less out of your control, much more out of your control, especially in high inflation times, like a couple of years ago or so. But we need to explain to the public that what the things that they demand of us cost money. Nothing in
Mhm.
life is free. And just my own 2 cents here, but I think sometimes even us at the league, we forget that that's a big part of why you need to get the revenues you need, because citizens are demanding you provide everything that you guys provide.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
so
city demands, cost of goods and services certainly haven't gone down lately. Cost of construction projects, insurance premiums, many things that factor into that expense
Yeah.
side. So that's a good point.
insurance premiums alone, you could probably say our insurance premiums increased this much, and you know, by chance, maybe you were even able to hire a police officer or add an extra firefighter or some other service that your community needed. And thank goodness your valuation did grow and you were able to capture that growth to pay for that additional services for the citizens of your community or something flowery like that.
Mhm. To
And I see
pay
a
for the,
follow-up question. Oh, go
to pay
ahead.
for the increase in city clerk wages, because we have the best city clerk in the state. That's what
There you go.
Also, this is just another thought, if there's evidence of population growth happening in certain cities, which is really high, that might also be
Mhm.
pushing up expenditures. That could be another valid reason to include it as well, in addition to inflation.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Explain things like that. I mean, if you built a new splash pad to accommodate growth in a neighborhood, that's your city probably did that for a very good purpose, and probably because that neighborhood was shouting at you to add some amenities to my neighborhood. Okay, well, this thing is not free. We had to account for that in our budget, and here you go.
Yep, and it looks like a follow-up question there in the Q&A. Can we use the same explanation if revenues go up, but the percent change is negative?
Yeah,
I
I
think
don't
that
think
is-
there's a real limitation there.
Mm.
You're only limited probably by the space that you have in that
I-
bubble, so to speak. But so you want to be strategic. I wouldn't recommend putting in like 1,000-word detailed explanation, but sometimes the messaging gets lost with the public with all of this stuff, as I'm sure many of you know. But I think it is fair to say, look, yeah, because of how these things work with valuations, we could actually lower our tax rate to collect more revenues in some of our very high growth communities. Now that may be changing with some of these new restrictions on the CGFL, but in the past, that was one of the things that some cities were able to do. They could actually lower their tax rate a little bit, but still bring in more revenue because their valuations were going through the roof. Not common, by the way.
Right.
Okay, so Andy reiterated, did anyone notice that they used 100,000, excuse me, in commercial valuation for the change in property tax paid? So since we have the new two-tiered structure after the business property tax credit conversion, the first 150 or up to 150 $1,000 valuation on commercial property gets the same as the residential rollback.
Right.
So that ends up being the same, even though the remaining over $150,000 in valuation receives a 90%. And I think, Teresa, you touched on that in your presentation as well. So that threshold of 100,000 can be very misleading in that example.
Right.
All right, maybe a couple of others in the chat. Let's see. It says, sorry if this was mentioned, but we have a special meeting on March 4th to finalize the proposed tax rate to submit to Department of Management on March 5th. Can we also approve our proposed tax rate public hearing, which will be scheduled for April 3rd? I assume this is fine, wanted to clarify, we weren't going to have a special meeting.
Okay, so the April, say that again.
It
They're
says-
setting April 3rd for their
a special
For that
meeting
first
March
hearing.
4th to finalize the proposed tax rate to submit to Department of Management on the 5th. Then can we approve our proposed tax rate public hearing, which will be scheduled for April 3rd?
Yes, they should.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the action they should take on that special meeting date, is to set their public hearing for April 3rd. And then she can put that in the dates that she, on the form to submit to the state.
let's see. The question I have, and I'm not sure where that goes, can you change the description if needed? I guess, is that related to why the revenues would go up?
I think you can change it until you send it to the Department of Management
Okay,
on that form.
did I see any questions that we've missed or any more questions? Those are the ones that I'm seeing.
Aaron, clock that you got them all.
Okay, well, if we have them, there's nothing else. I'll give you just a few more seconds to add anything that we might have missed popping up on the screen. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us for the open office hours on budget. And absolutely follow up with any one of us on the panel if you have any questions after this, or of course, Ted Nelson at Department of Management, always a great resource on this. Anything else from the panel members here before we close out?
Hold on, I got one more question.
Okay, one more
from
question.
Sandra.
I didn't think you could set your public hearing for budget adoption until after you had the levy hearing.
Yeah, I guess I think weren't they setting their hearing for April 3rd for the proposed
Tax rate.
tax rate, and then after that, they're gonna have to set their public hearing for budget adoption? That's what they were talking about, right?
Yeah,
But
I think
thought
so. Yeah.
Yes, she.
And so then most likely, so what I'm hearing most from the membership right now is that first one on the proposed tax rate, the hearing that is, will be late March, early April, depends on everyone's schedules out there, of course. And then the next meeting will be, for some cities, 2 weeks later, some cities might be 3 weeks later. It just, again, depends heavily on each city's meeting schedule, with a note that most of our smaller cities and medium-sized cities meet once per month. So the other cities are probably going to have to really figure out a good plan here to get it all done. But a lot of cities are looking at that again. First, the proposed tax rate hearing, late March, early April. The final annual budget adoption is going to be more like mid to late April. So it's going to be, again, sorry, I go back before, like it looked like at first, like we're going to have more time and more flexibility, and it's really not the case. It's going to be pretty tight time frame and a window.
Yeah, less time actually.
Yeah.
So I would say anytime between right now and March 5th, a city could be setting the date for the hearing on their proposed tax notice for March 25th or after. And when they set that date, they're going to be, I moved or motion to set public hearing date for whatever date it is. And then city clerks, finance people, whatever, we'll know that date, and then we can put it on that form and we can go ahead and submit it. So that'll be happening. That should be happening anytime between now and March 5th.
Okay, I am asking Bev, she's got her hand raised, so I'm going to ask her to unmute so she can ask her question. Go
Oh,
for
I
it, Bev.
really did. I really didn't. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Must have hit it by mistake. So bad. I'm like, what is
That's
that?
just
that's okay.
wanted a high five.
Yeah, there you go. Great job, guys. Appreciate everything. I'm muting
Thank
that.
you.
So we just like showing that works too. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Right.
Just showing off.
And true to form,
Have
Bev dropped in a great little note in the chat for anybody that's following along on the chat there.
I can't see it, Nikki.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
put it
So,
in.
well, that's
I'll
for us.
drop it in.
Okay. Well, it basically is kind of the guidance we've been providing within a lot of our budget documents and resources about kind of how this all works with scheduling. So that's a quick reminder, which I think Teresa and Aaron both talked about. The budget special report has a lot of guidance, and then on our website as well, we've put a lot of different things out there. So it's a lot to take in. We understand that, but that's why we held this session today. Aaron put this together. Thank you, Aaron. Really good idea. I think it's really good for the membership. Teresa, great guidance. It's always good to have Biswa on as well.
Sure.
It looks like
Anytime.
Heather-